Hey, welcome to Major TV. So, Florian Wirtz at Liverpool, huge amount of money. Where is he going to play in Arne Slot's side? So I did a video last week talking about how Liverpool really meant business by going big on that transfer and did a little comparison statistically between Florian Wirtz and Dominic Szoboszlai. I put that out as a short on YouTube as well. Thank you to everyone who's watched and interacted with those videos. But I had a few comments back, and one of them was, well, Szoboszlai doesn't play as the 10. And a few people say McAllister's the 10. I was like, no, not necessarily the 10, the position, broadly speaking. There was a little bit of confusion over it, and perhaps more than necessary. But equally, I think there's an understandable amount of confusion because, yeah, Liverpool don't strictly play with a 10. They play 10-ish at times, and Szoboszlai is the most 10-ish of the midfielders when Liverpool play them. You know, that is the one that's afforded more freedom to get into attacking positions. Certainly more than McAllister, who I think has got more defensive responsibilities on the other side. And obviously Gravenberch is the holding midfielder and very rarely gets opportunities to burst into the other half of the pitch, even though he's clearly got the skill set to do it. But that's by the by for now. So yeah, the question is someone like Wirtz just going to come in and that's it? He's got Szoboszlai's position in the team. End of story. Job done. No, probably not. And it's more complicated, sure. But what I want to do is look back on last season and look at a couple of choice performances from him and where he played for Leverkusen. Because, now look, I'm not a huge Bundesliga buff, and I think that's true of a lot of football fans. I think a lot of people who are Liverpool fans are coming to Wirtz. It's like, we know he's really good. Maybe we've watched some highlight reels of him. Maybe we remember his performance, particularly against Liverpool in the Champions League or whatever. But I think there's a lot of common knowledge around him and around Leverkusen. I was a bit surprised delving into it, to be honest. So I'm going to pick through some heat maps from some choice games. I want to talk about him, how he's played in a general on the season. I want to find some comparisons. I want to look in more depth at how certain players in Liverpool's squad have played and see if we can kind of imagine what he might look like and what Liverpool might have to do to accommodate him. Where is he a straight fit, or will we have to change system and formation and ask other things of other footballers? So let's start by looking at last season. So I'm going to pull up 4 games in particular from Bayer. Now, why I've picked these they're all pretty big teams, which I think is the best way to kind of judge. I don't really care how he played against the lower lights of the Bundesliga. I've picked some Champions League games and a couple of big teams in the Bundesliga as well. I'm going to start with the 4-2 defeat to Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga in May. And in this one, this is, I think, what you'd call the archetypal understanding of a Bayer Leverkusen team. It's 3 at the back. It's 3-4-2-1. It's Florian Wirtz playing in a sort of joint 10 behind Teller, left-hand 10, if that makes sense. I'll put it up on the screen so you can see. And what you can see from his heat map is a really interesting splodge right in the middle of the pitch. Is it, I guess, him taking kickoffs? Maybe if there's like 4 goals that have gone in, spent a lot of time kicking off a game. But you can see very high and wide on the left-hand side is where the biggest sort of concentration of his impact on the game. There's another one on the halfway line on the left-hand side, but that kind of fits with what you know. He's playing as the left-hand side of the 10. Grimaldo will be tasked with getting up and patrolling the left-hand side, but Wirtz will be drifting over and having that impact, getting further up the pitch, and yeah, doing that. So not a straightforward, as you would understand it, number 10, which is, I think I mentioned it on the previous video, but kind of how Gerrard and Torres would have done it, or where Littmann would have played, or countless number of, classic 10s, whereas you see that, I think in my mind's eye, I picture that on the edge of the D, outside the opposition penalty area, but definitely much more left-sided in this one, in what you consider, I think, to be broadly how you would expect Leverkusen to line up. The next fixture in question is a 0-0 draw with Bayern at home in the Bundesliga in February. In this particular game. They went 4-4-2. Flat back four. Frimpong played right mid, interestingly enough, for them in this one, and Wirtz played as a two-man up front. Now, look, people who watch these games and understand it better might be able to tell me whether that was an actual traditional sort of 4-4-2, two men up top, or was it more like two sort of false nines, or is it more of him drifting? Well, what you can see from the heat map is actually, even though he's nominally named as the left of the front two, and he does have a greater congregation of touches towards the left, there is a big old splodge there on the right hand side. And again, you know, if you're visually imagining it, whether you can be asked to look at the pictures or not, or just want to listen to my soothing tones. How I've described the 10 previously as being central on the edge of the D, these are two hotspots to the left and right of that. So that these are the zones where he's getting on the ball, that's on the edge of the 18-yard box, and looking to make things happen from there. And of course, there are plenty of other touches across the opposition half and a little bit deeper as well. This is actually quite a balanced one for him when he's starting in a much more advanced position, and you're getting a far more structured, familiarly structured midfield and defence than what we understand from English football, perhaps a touch. I'll move on then. The next one is a 3-0 defeat to Bayern Munich on the 5th of March. Bayer went down to 10 men in this one, and this is one of the games I've picked out. This is like the least hot of the hotspot heat maps for Wirtz. But again, they went for a more 4-4-2 like formation in this. Again, left of a two up top, different strike partner this time around for him. But what you can see is it is predominantly left-hand side, and perhaps less influence in this. And again, people who watch this game might be able to tell you more depth and detail of what them picking up a red card might have done to the formation and system and stuff, but not an outstanding game for him. He ends up being substituted as well. But again, it's him drifting predominantly over to the left-hand side of the pitch, and that's where he's trying to look to get on the ball and influence things. And the last one I want to pick out is a 2-1 defeat to Atletico Madrid in the Champions League on the 21st of January, where they played a 4-2-3-1, and Wirtz, again, in lineup is 10, is our archetypal understanding of 10. That is to say, 3 men behind Teller, Grimaldo and Frimpong either side, and Wirtz down the middle. And again, it's funny because we say formations, and I think this is a wider point to be made. Formations are at times a bit of bollocks, because a 4-2-3-1 with those players will look completely different from a 4-2-3-1, where I think where Liverpool have played it in years gone by, and it might have been someone like Mane, Shaqiri, Oxlade-Chamberlain, and then like a Salah up front or whatever. You know, you take my point. But interesting to see again a good cross-section across the opposition half, predominantly again drifting over to that left-hand side, but definitely have an impact across in front of the opposition 18-yard box, and even a little stint at left back as well. Maybe that was in a red card type situation, but whatever. It does speak a little bit to his overall work rate. So I thought that was quite interesting. What I want to see, we'll move on to next, is to look at the season heat maps and just see how he looked across a full campaign. Oh yeah, season heat maps, hot baby, because there's lots of games and lots of touches. Now, what I've done for this one is I've picked the Bundesliga as a whole. Like I'm going to leverage. I did an original version of this video, and I did Champions League. It was only 9 games in the Champions League, and that was quite good because it stacked up quite well with Liverpool's. But I just thought I'll just go for a massive sample size because I'm making a broader point here. But what you can see is, yes, huge, hot, all across the opposition half, but still predominantly centred more left-hand side. And you can see that by how much more there is in his own half on the left-hand side, which speaks to dirty work, going back, getting stuck in, getting on the ball deeper, influencing from different areas of the football pitch. But widespread wildfire from Florian Wirtz is an absolute attacking machine, wants to go wherever the play will dictate, wherever he will best be able to influence a football match. And yeah, that is a beautiful looking map for a player that you are going to spend a huge amount of money on, because it says that he wants to be in all of the areas of the pitch where you can most hurt an opposition team. Now, moving this on ever so slightly, I want to look at a couple of Liverpool players in the same sort of way. And we're going to start with Szoboszlai, because he was the comparison I made on the previous video. We're talking about being 10-ish. So let's get his season heat map up. That's easy for me to say. His season heat map. And what you can see from Dom is similar in some aspects, in so much as there's actually quite a good cluster in his own half on that right-hand side, and we know Szoboszlai plays more right-hand side of Liverpool's midfield than he does, certainly he does on the left, and then he's got a good sort of wide section and chunk on that right-hand sort of quarter from the edge of the penalty area up to the sort of centre circle, and then all the way wide to the right-hand touch line. But it speaks to a player, and what you can tell from watching Szoboszlai, and we have watched, and presumably you've watched loads of Szoboszlai like I did last season as well, that are very, very much more constrained to the right-hand side of the pitch. And this is kind of backed up a little bit. Well, I get Alexis McAllister's up, and you can see it's similar but hotter for McAllister left side, because on the rough balance of things, it is in Slot's concept of a 4-3-3. It is Gravenberch sat at the base. It is McAllister left and Szoboszlai right, with a couple of exceptions. Old Trafford away being one of the real key ones of that, where it worked really well by mixing things up. And McAllister actually dropped a bit deeper, and Gravenberch pushed on, and Szoboszlai played more from the left of midfield. But that shows you a bit more the balance when you put them side by side. In fact, that compared to Wirtz, who's predominantly. No, not even predominantly, definitely more on the left than on the right. He's got a really nice spread across the front line and more deeper stuff on the left. Whereas actually, if you pair Szoboszlai and McAllister together, you've got great midfield coverage between the two of them, but both in a much more sort of structured way. And actually, almost surprisingly for me, more touches in advanced areas for Alexis McAllister. And maybe that doesn't surprise you, but again, I think if you had to ask who was the one who was the more attacking of Liverpool's midfield, I'd say Szoboszlai, but a lot of it might come down to how much off the ball stuff he does. He does get into those positions, but a lot of it is selfless running. It's tearing up and down the pitch. It's making space for Salah by making inverted runs or overlapping runs or what have you. But yeah, what it shows is that of those players, there is no direct comparison in Liverpool's midfield between Florian Wirtz and what we've got currently at the football club. Out of interest, I'm moving on to some of the attacking players. Cody Gakpo, again, for a lad who was determined to let the world be known that he plays left-hand side, lo and behold, his season heat map for the Premier League is all left-hand side. Obviously, with a bit of drifting centrally and a bit of dirty work deeper in our half as well. Or I say dirty work, it is just picking the ball up in deeper positions as well, rather than like necessarily him putting big crunching tackles in. Luis Diaz is very, very similar. Hotter in the areas where you'd expect him to be, and you're seeing him move a bit more centrally as well, because of course he played games in a more central area. Now, obviously, that he's more likely to have hot spots in the centre of the central position because he played centre forward for us, which is an explanation for a bit of the Wirtz stuff, because he played in multiple positions, and he's therefore likely to crop up in different areas of the pitch by position. But the one that is interesting, because what we know about Wirtz is that, and there was a great video that Chris and Josh did on the deep dive on the Red Men YouTube channel last week, talking about like his touches and involvements in football matches, and there's stats saying that Wirtz basically gets more touch and gets on the ball more than prime Messi and prime Roberto Firmino, central to how his team plays. That Mohamed Salah, I think we would probably make a strong case that Liverpool's, look, he's our main man. So he receives, I think, so many progressive passes. We all know he's the guy, whether he's getting the most assists in the season, which he did, scoring the most goals, which he did. So much of what we do is geared towards getting Mohamed Salah on the ball, either finishing stuff off or creating stuff for the other players around him. So when you look at Salah's season heat map, it's so blindingly obvious. It is an absolute, like, uncontrollable raging fire down the right-hand side, the entire right-hand side, and then getting him into the box as well, which is what we know. Paul Tompkins did a great amount of work on this season, the Salah zone. If you want to get Mohamed Salah to score goals for Liverpool, that hot spot inside the 18-yard box is where he scores his goals from. Just sort of right of central, it's a box within the box, and that's where he scores from. He's actually not great anymore at shooting from distance. but that is his real sort of zone of terror. But it's telling that this is our creative playmaker, the guy with the most assists for us on the season, and he's a right winger. He is, or a right-sided forward. He's not doing work on the left. He's not drifting into the 10 to make things happen consistently for Liverpool. So that is an interesting facet to his game. So what it left me thinking is, can I find a footballer to kind of give me an understanding? So one of the ones I went to, first and foremost, was Jude Bellingham. So you look at where Jude Bellingham is on the season, it's another one predominantly left-hand side, but there are some real similarities there between him and Wirtz, although much more work done deeper on the left-hand side, and that's to be expected. Ultimately, he's a central midfielder, and we know he can play further forward, and Madrid at times since signing him have played him in the front three and those kind of things, but that tells you of a guy who's a string puller from slightly deeper. It's a much more active version of Alexis McAllister's heat map, but there are a few similarities to Wirtz in there, and that's what I'm saying is, like, there's a player who is the main man for a football team, and he's allowed to get on the ball, and he's getting loads of touches, and he's getting touches in good areas of the pitch to suit his skill set as well. And I was gonna, the initial version of this video, I kind of drew a line there, and in saying I couldn't really find anyone who was really within the Wirtz sort of skill set who I could compare. I had a look at PSG, and there was no one who was really quite like it. Vitinha had a kind of spread, but it was all a bit deeper. When we were having a conversation on the Red Men Originals podcast, where we were talking about, I was asking Chris and Chloe and Dan where they thought he might play and what he might do, and the name came up in conversation casually, and I was like, oh my God, it's obvious. Can you tell me what the obvious comparison is? And I should have had this straight off the bat because of who he was linked with and how he's been getting billed because of who he was linked with prior to choosing Liverpool. Answer below. I'll give you a few seconds to work it out if you haven't done so already. Which player should I be pulling up the seasonal heat map of to give us a rough understanding? It should be similar to what Florian Wirtz is. Okay? Right, the seasonal heat map that is most similar that I've found is Kevin De Bruyne. Yes. Now, not actually so much of the deeper stuff. Now, he does get on the ball deeper and he does like to dictate play, of course. And of course, the season just gone is Kevin De Bruyne, the waning power. However, in terms of getting on the ball across the pitch from left to right and actually sometimes getting beyond the sort of edge of the 18-yard box and left-hand side drifting for that as well. Yeah, Kevin De Bruyne. And why? Because Kevin De Bruyne is a free-roll creative playmaker. He's got the ability to dictate football matches from wherever he thinks it's best to dictate football matches from. And that is so pant-wettingly exciting for me because, and I made this point on the podcast, is I don't really think Liverpool have owned a player like this. Gerrard, yes, but Gerrard definitely had his own sort of zones of terror, his areas where he was most effective. There will be other players who maybe you can give me some examples in the comments. I'll have a little look into them if you don't mind. But yeah, I can't think of many players who have been allowed freedom of the pitch. Now the question is, will Liverpool do that, or will they be a bit more structured in their approach? Because the more structured approach is, maybe you just shift the balance around. You make move McAllister over to the right-hand side of midfield, and you give McAllister's slot to Florian Wirtz. That's him there nominally more often on the left-hand side of the pitch, whereas where he wants to be, so he can impact it from that, but then also drift over right as necessary. That's definitely a possibility. There is a change where you could just move it to a pure double pivot, so you ask Szoboszlai to drop in deeper, McAllister, Gravenberch, Jones, and Szoboszlai become in rotation for two double pivot roles, which gives you a little bit more foundation to have more of like four attackers, including Florian Wirtz. That would be very, very exciting. But the real beauty of this lad is that he could play false nine for Liverpool in a Bobby Firmino kind of way. He could start left of the front three for us. He could start in a 10. I think he could do a really good job as an 8 if we wanted him to, or either side, left or right, if we were asking him to do that. I wonder whether we will cut our cloth accordingly with him, because he is a superstar in the making. Salah is the main man, and so much will still be geared towards Salah scoring and creating, of course. But, you know, in the long term, Wirtz is 22 years old. He is being bought to be Liverpool's next main man. That's what he's been brought in for. And so what you can do is you can change the way you play to whatever team it is you're playing, and Wirtz will go and fit wherever he needs to fit to make that work. So you might see more of us playing 2 false nines like we did at City away when it was Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones, but one of them's Florian Wirtz. You might see us play more 4-2-3-1 when he actually is playing the 10. It might be a game where, yeah, you do start him left of a front three, but he drifts and he goes wherever he sort of wants, and you know, and then Diaz will be, maybe Diaz starting the 9 and they can interchange. Because one thing that I think is really interesting, what we've seen in development this season in football, is Paris Saint-Germain and how they just basically have doubled down on attacking players, brought in Kvaratskhelia, and they've gone, right, cool, figure out what we're going to do, because even we don't know what we're going to do because we're so good. And he feels like, Wirtz feels like a signing more towards that. He's dribbly, he's direct, he's got creative vision, and he's an absolute sort of monster in terms of pressing and causing problems for the opposition team as well. Now, I think we're missing a huge piece of the jigsaw, and whether it's a physical piece of jigsaw, like a new player to be brought in, or actually just in our understanding, it is the number 9 position, and that will hugely dictate. Because is he Julian Alvarez to Erling Haaland? And that is to say, he can do centre forwardy bits, but he'll just basically, his job is to just float around this guy, pick up goals and pick up assists. Or is he then De Bruyne removed from that? So we'll have a creative player and we'll have a number 9, etc., etc. Or again, is it just all him? Is it all him and we'll shuffle other pieces around him? TBC, I guess. But the beauty of him is that he does allow us to be so much more tactically flexible. So I don't think it will be a straight, this is exactly how Liverpool play now that they've got Wirtz, because he is so good and he will go so many different places. But I think other players in the team will move around him to facilitate his brilliance. So whereas he might nominally be a 10 as a footballer, and we might call him that, or maybe we'll call him the false 9, I don't think he'll do it like any player that we've seen in modern Liverpool, which I'm really, really interested to see. Right, let me know. What do you think? Formation-wise, are we going to change formation? Are we going to shoehorn him in to the existing formation? Do we do anything wild, interesting, or different? Have you had any more experience of seeing him play in the Bundesliga that you think, no, it's obviously going to be this? Let's have a chat in the comments underneath on all this. And I want to draw your attention to something. We made a football shirt. Yeah, it's the 15th anniversary of Redmen on YouTube. I love football shirts, I do. And I've always wanted to make a Redmen one, and so yeah, we've done it. It's available to pre-order. It looks like this. It is sensational. Playing homage to our FA Cup winning heroics of 91-92. It has got a sewn badge, it has got the Redmen 15 logo, and it is available to pre-order, but only until the 25th of June. Once that pre-order is closed, that is it. It is done and dusted. We will not be making any more. So it is a very, very limited, very, very special edition, one and done kind of deal. So if you want one, head to redmenmerch.com. Yeah, go through, have a little look, get your pre-order in, and yeah, we'll be shipping them from the end of the first week or so in July, hopefully, unless we get thousands of them, and then we'll have to figure that all out. But yeah, first come, first served, short window, get involved. I'm made up with it. I think it's really, really cool, and hopefully you do too. Anyway, do subscribe, do drop a like, and again, answer anything we've discussed in the comments section underneath. Up the Florian Wirtz.